Joined the ticket in May. And it's fun to be here in Orem. This is my hometown. So I grew up in Orem. My parents are, it's fun to have my parents here, my grandma's here, my sister, my dad was on the city council here in Orem. My mom's involved with Freedom Festival, so we've had a big presence here in Orem and love the city here. And it's fun to be with you tonight. Phil is driving up from Blanding right now, so he's also covering the state. Wanted to be here tonight, but he's on his way up here, and it's just, we're kind of scattered all around. But I just wanted to give you a few thoughts. Do most of you know about Phil? I mean, most of you probably, raise your hand if this is your first event, maybe your first event to kind of find out things about him. So I think a lot of us have been following this race for a long time, so thank you for paying attention to what's going on. Phil asked me to run with him because I have a background in, I'm an attorney and I've done a lot with elections. And a couple of years ago we wrote an election code, it's called Secure Vote Utah. It was an initiative, and we took it across the state and we said, do you want to sign on to this to have secure voting and to return to vote in person, one-day voting, have paper ballots, let people vote in person and count all the voting there in person. And there's a huge support for that, which is incredible. So that's the Lieutenant Governor's office is over elections, and it's become especially helpful if you've been following our campaign, is we've had so much pushback from the Lieutenant Governor's office right now in every way imaginable, from denying us opportunities to view the nominating petitions. And if you follow the news today, another audit came back and they are short on signatures, and they're upfront about it. There's no way that they got the signatures. They do a caveat and they said, well, we could have got more had we gotten more, but they didn't get more, and the time is up. And so we're going to continue to push back on that. You cannot have a system where there's only 3 states in the United States where you don't have a separation between the governor's office and the person counting the ballots. And in Utah, the lieutenant governor runs on the same ticket with the governor and counts those ballots. So there is no separation, there is no transparency. And if we were in office, we would do, well, number 1, get a Secretary of State, number 2, be as open as possible. Like you've got to be open with people, and there's no reason why these petition packets are concealed from people. There's individuals who went in and saw school board races, and the Lieutenant Governor's office was, sure, come on in, let's schedule a time, come look at these packets. And then a couple weeks later we ask and they say, oh no, you don't touch these are ours, you don't look here. So there's a lot of problems, a lot of inconsistencies in the governor's office. We're seeing that especially play out in elections, and we're concerned as we go forward. We've got the general election around the corner. There are no documents that are available after an election to be able to verify it, 0. And that is, we're one of the top 3 worst in the country on that. We're with California and Virginia as far as giving no access to be able to verify it. We have to be able to trust our elections. If you watch, Deidre just had a press conference a couple days ago where she's saying, don't ask questions, doubt your doubts, doubt your doubters, or whatever. I mean, she's like, but she's not going to show you anything. She won't give you any proof, but she just it's all these talking points. This is not okay. And that's why we stayed in this race. That's why we're writing candidates. It's an uphill battle for sure to be a writing candidate. But we have to put pressure on this. We have to have change. This is not sustainable to have a state that is this conceals the election results like this. And so we're going to continue to push back, and we have a legitimate case. There was criminal investigations going on currently to several of these candidates' packets right now. Phil, as a representative, should have every access to see this. There couldn't be more of a perfect storm to be able to view these documents, and so we're not stepping back. And it reminds me, I served my mission in Germany. Loved it there. Great people there. They are rule followers. Like they don't want to rock the boat. They'll yell out the window. You're on the wrong side of the road on your bicycle, or I mean, they'll tell you wrong side of the sidewalk even. Good people, but they follow the rules. And there's a story that's a little bit haunting that's told of someone who lived during the Holocaust there, and said there was a church that right behind the church was train tracks, and it would take the people to the concentration camps, and it was really hard for the people because they're witnessing this happening. And they would see the people go, and they could hear their cries. And so what the people in the church did is that they decided to sing on those Sundays when they would hear the people go by. And they felt like if they sang, it wasn't to calm the Jews and to help them to feel better. It was to calm themselves, because it was so disturbing for them to hear this problem. They just wanted to quiet the problem and just to mask it so people wouldn't hear it. So they'd sing to cover it up. And I feel like that's where we are right now in our society. We've got problems. We have major problems going on. We can sit back and say, don't talk about it. Let's disagree better. Let's not touch these hot topics. Let's ignore all this stuff. Or we can say, this is a problem, and we're making noise. It's not the singing to pacify, but we're going to get change. And we look back. You guys are all here because you love our country, and I'm sure we hold with respect our founders. We love our patriotism. We have the greatest heroes who have stood up, and I love all the stories that Carlton shared about those people who stood up against a tyrannical government. And they made noise. They made the right noise, and they said, we cannot live in this system. We need to be able to protect our life, liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. And if the government becomes too tyrannical, you push back against it. And that's where we are right now. We need to push back against some of these things that are happening. And we, I think, have a message for Phil. So it's been fun to be on the campaign with Charles with him and hear him speak at all these events. He stands strong for personhood, parenthood, and statehood. And all those things are critical. Every one of those needs to stay in its lane, and those rights need to be respected. A person needs to be able to be respected. I wrote down some thoughts coming in here. The personhood, I think about free speech and what we're seeing happening right now. We've got a governor who's saying, I want to label your speech. If you say certain words, I'm going to score you down here. I went to the state PTA meeting. That's the keynote speaker was telling me about dignity, the dignity index, and how we're going to label everyone's speech. And when we're walking right towards North Korea, there's words that they don't even have in their lexicon. They don't say revolution. They don't have words for love. They don't have those words. And we're going that direction. We cannot label speech. There has to be free speech. We see a governor, lieutenant governor, Senate and House of Representatives. Every single person, except for Phil Lyman, every single one of them decided to condemn an individual on the state school board because of her speech. Every single one. And so that's where we're going. We cannot do that. Our freedom of speech is paramount to our free society. And we've got to push back on that. That's part of our personhood and our freedom of speech. Parenthood. It's important. We looked at what's happened these last 4 years. We cannot have that again. We can't have that same system going on. We had parents who stood up against these unconstitutional mandates of masking the children in the schools. And what happened when those parents, they wanted to exercise their right of parenthood, they will go to the school board meeting, they get locked out, they get criminally charged, and they get called extremists. That's not right. And I've been involved in a lot of things on education. I'm glad Emily's running with this too, but we have surveys that are going to our children. They're asking them 18 different times, are you considering suicide? Now are you considering suicide? How about now? And it's in the same single survey. And it's asking them, did you buy drugs? Who would you buy them from? Would you buy marijuana? Do you have someone that you would buy cocaine from? Do you know someone you'd buy this from? And I took that survey and I read through it. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. You're introducing all of these ideas in our children. So this is not okay. We've got too much. That's coming from the state into our schools. It's coming from the federal government into our schools. And we've got gender confusion coming in. That's coming from the very top, from our governor, who introduces his pronouns. He's the one who recognizes the Pride Month. We're one of the first states to have done that. He's done it all 4 years. And that confusion is going into our classrooms. So personhood, parenthood, statehood is the last one I'm going to mention. We've got a governor right now that is not staying in his lane. He is very involved in legislation. He's got different groups of people that they come and they tell the legislators, this is what we want, this is the legislation we want pushed, and he gets his things passed. So he needs to stay in his lane on that. We're seeing federal policies that is making Utah almost like a penal colony for all these other countries who are emptying their prisons. We've got people who are coming to Utah. We heard today from somebody who said, I tried to renew my housing. I live in Salt Lake, tried to renew my house, and I was denied that, and they said that I couldn't renew my lease on my apartment because my apartment's being turned over to refugees now, and so she's now homeless. And so we've got that kind of stuff is happening right now. It's because of our policies that are, obviously a lot of this is coming from the state down, it's coming from the federal government down, but we don't have a governor who's pushing back on that. And we need a governor to recognize statehood and say, these policies, we will not be an open door for this. We need to protect our own citizens here. And right now, our governor is opening the door and creating policies that is making us be a sanctuary state. And then we're seeing with the statehood, we're seeing the centralization of power, not only in the elections, where all those nominating petitions were all verified by a single clerk, who didn't ever have a contract. Davis County clerk never had a contract to do it, and the people they were temp workers who were not even certified to verify these signatures. So we're seeing this centralization in our elections. We're seeing our governor right now he wanted to appoint the attorney general. Can you imagine if that was appointed? There's no separation there. And the state school board and the treasurer and the auditor. There's this huge power grab that we're seeing in our state. So I think about all these things happening in our state. This is a time, going back to my beginning remarks, what are we going to do? Are we sitting back? You guys are not sitting back. That's why you're here today, is because you're making noise, you're watching what's happening, you're going to push back on it, you're not going to pacify everyone and say, don't make noise, you don't want to rock the boat. We have to rock the boat. We've got to make noise, we've got to stand up for our freedoms. This is not about us, this is about our children. This is about the next generation, and this is about the country that we're going to leave them, and the trajectory we're on is something that's troubling. And we're hopeful for the state. We know there's great things to come. I just want to leave and let you know that we have felt very strongly about being in this campaign that this is the right thing to do. And I don't know how this person at this time, right when we needed it, all these miracles are happening for us. And like Carlton mentioned with George Washington, we had miracles in the founding of our country. We are continuing to see miracles today. I believe that God believes He's a God of liberty and freedom and justice, and He wants to see those things happening. And I think if we are standing up for those principles, we're on the right side. So when you look at your ballot, we're writing candidates because of, a little bit of some more funny business. There's 3 Lymans on the ballot. So if you go to write in Phil Lyman, make sure you write Phil Lyman, both the first name and last name. And tell your friends if people are concerned about splitting the ticket, because we've heard that before. Right now, we do not have a conservative governor. We have someone in there who has very liberal policies, who is bringing in liberal judges. Phil Lyman is the conservative on the ballot who's running. So we want to,
Yeah, so if we have someone that writes in Phil Lyman, but they don't remember your name, is that ballot going to count?
So it should count. So the instruction we got from the Lieutenant Governor's office is it just has to be, the intent needs to be clear. So Phil Lyman should be sufficient, that should be clear. So, if you want to write the whole thing to be thorough, then it should be okay with Phil.
Oh, I will.
I'm going to write your name too.
Natalie Clausen.
Lieutenant Governor, there's too much that's not right with that whole situation.
Yeah. I think many of us agree on that.
Right.
The idea, I believe, is best for writing your name also.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because they keep throwing things out there.
Repeat your name.
Oh, my name's Natalie Clausen, so I'm running for Lieutenant Governor with Phil. But thank you for having me here tonight.